All right, let's work through one more quick tutorial. And in order to do this, we're going to need to grab a picture that I've put in Blackboard in Learning Plan 10 for today. If you scroll down, you will see Photo for Vanishing Point Demo. Click on that, and then you might have to click again to get it to download. Oh, come on. Don't want it like that. Tell you, this feels like a day of craziness. Really? Ugh. Finally. We don't need it open in the preview mode, that's for sure. Probably, yep. If it's doing that, just right click on it and say save photo as, and it put it, in my case, to the desktop, so I can grab it from there and open it in Photoshop. So this is the picture that we should all be working with in Photoshop. You can close out that other stuff we were working on. And in our example, we're going to pretend that our client has bought this building and they're thinking about doing some things. Specifically, they want to add a couple of windows over on this side and get rid of that big sign up at the top left. And they want to add their name to the side of the building like it's painted on, like a mural. And then we're also going to add a green pinstripe above these awnings over on this other side of the building. So the cool thing in Photoshop is that you can do stuff like this. And you might find that you become a little obsessed with this when things are happening maybe around your house, like you want to try on a new front door color on your house. Take a picture of your house, start playing with it in Photoshop. It's a heck of a lot cheaper than really painting your doors. I have a friend who did a whole landscape plan for her mom by taking a picture of her front yard and then going and getting pictures of the actual stuff she wanted to do and plopping them in and spinning them and rotating them. And she did a beautiful, she's like, here, this is what your yard can look like if you hire someone to pay money. Because I'm not doing it, but this is pretty cool. So we're going to do this with this image. All right. Okay, first thing that we need to do is we need to make a new layer where we're going to do all of our edits in Vanishing Point mode. And we want that to be separate so it's a non-destructive workflow. So we're going to hold down Option and click on the new layer button, and that's going to bring up where we can name it right away. So it's just a quicker step. And we're going to name this layer Vanishing Point. So in our layer panel, we have the background photo, and we have a blank layer called Vanishing Point. With that layer selected, make sure we're working on that layer, we're going to enter into this thing called Vanishing Point. So we need to go up to the Filter options and then Vanishing Point. And it's going to pop up a whole new workspace for us. So we see we have different tools on the right hand or on the left hand side in our toolbar, and we have our picture. There's kind of a little tutorial that shows up here at the top left. Click the four corners of a perspective plane or object to create this editing plane and then tear off perpendicular planes, yada yada. So it kind of gives you hints as you're going along. What we're going to do then, we're going to use the first tool that's highlighted, which is the Create Plane tool. So that's the one that's highlighted. And we are going to click on some corners. So we're going to start on the left-hand side of this building. We're going to start up here. Can you guys see where my cursor is? Above this balcony and where this like molding is. We're going to start there and we're going to click once. And then we're going to drag out to the right and we're going to follow the angle of the building. So we're going to come almost to the edge here and we're going to make our second point. Then we're going to come down to where the lighter tan hits this darker tan kind of on the base of the building, and we're going to make another point there. And then we're going to drag over to the left, and we're going to follow the angle of that tan line, and we're going to make our fourth click.
If you did a good job, you should have a blue grid show up, like I did every time I've done this demo until today. You guys get a blue grid? Anybody? Yes? Okay, good. Honestly, like I said, this is like some sort of voodoo. Am I the only one that got a red plane? A blue grid means you did a good job. That's what I expected to see. A yellow grid, Photoshop can't see the perspective, and a red grid, your math is off. Use the Edit Plane tool to adjust it. Well, believe me, I am trying. Ugh. Well, it's getting better. Now I got yellow at least. Hey! Who knew I could fix it? So, eventually we get a grid, and you can see the perspective, how when it goes away from you, it gets, the squares start getting smaller. All right. All right, now what we need to do is we need to add a perspective plane on the right-hand side or a perpendicular plane. So we've got one on the left-hand side of the building. We now need one for the front side of the building. Shift back to, sorry, this is not working as it did yesterday already. We're going to hold Command, and we're going to drag on the right edge of this node. So holding Command, the right middle bounding point of the one that we have, we're going to start dragging to the right. And I'm going to drag over all the way to the end of the second building. Okay. So Command, and then let go, and drag that middle bounding point out to the right, and we now put a perpendicular grid on the front of our building. All right, with that selection tool at the very top, or the edit plane, if you need to drag on some of these to kind of fix it and make it look a little bit better to what it really is, go ahead and drag down your right and or left bottom pieces in the right corner. Again, you should have a blue grid still showing, but you can kind of tweak your grid. I pulled down on that top right grid point just a little bit to get this grid line at the top to look pretty consistent left to right, so that when I do paint that green stripe, it's going to kind of make sense there. And if you want, you can also pull this up higher, so you can pull that top middle node up higher, so it goes up higher on the building, up to the green roof line. And when you come back to the left side of the building, you can do the same thing. You can pull on that middle node and drag your grid up higher on this building as well. You can also drag the middle left node to the left to get it to go further out on our building so that it covers the balcony and everything else. We now have this perspective grid across all of the left side of the building and all of the front side of the building. Up in the grid size, up in the top option bar, you can change that. So if you want more grids, make it smaller. I'm pulling mine down to like 50 so I can see even a smaller grid here. And that did the same thing for the grid on the right. When you click left or right, you activate whichever perspective grid you're going to be on. All right, the first thing that we want to do, I'm going to zoom in. So use the zoom tool in this special window and zoom in on the Franklin sign. Make sure that you have room to the left of it that you can see where there's clean siding or cement or whatever this is, stone. we're going to be using the marquee tool. So switch in your toolbar over to the marquee option. This tool in this vanishing point filter understands perspective also. So it's not just a simple marquee tool, it's also going to marquee in perspective. And it can double as a patch tool, where when we drag it over something, it's going to fill in and heal the area that we wanted it to be in. The little tip that it gives you is click and drag in a plane to select an area on that plane, and then option drag to copy an area to a new destination, or command drag to fill it with a source image. All right, let's draw a rectangle or a shape around this Franklin sign. So with your marquee tool, come over here and marquee it. Notice that it's not a level shape. It's selecting it in perspective, so it's kind of angled. So my marching ants are going at an angle to the up and to the right. Put your cursor inside of here and click and start dragging it around to the other side of the building, and notice how it actually bends to go to that side of the building. Pretty cool. Bring it back, don't let go, or if you did, select it again and drag it back over here. It's just showing you that it's smart enough to understand the two perspectives that you've created, and it'll wrap around. So put your marquee over the Franklin sign again so that you have it selected well. And we're going to hold Shift and Command, and we're going to drag over to the left. The Shift is going to hold it level so that it doesn't bump around. And the Command tool is going to make it function like the patch tool. So Shift, Command, and then drag over to the left. And when you let go, it should fill that area like the patch tool does. There's some options up here in our option bar that you might have seen, and we can work with those before the fact or after the fact. These are live changes. So there's a feather, so if you didn't want a really hard edge, you could change the amount of feathering on that. The opacity obviously would blend that with what was there before, but since we're trying to hide this sign, we don't want opacity. We want to keep it the way it is. And then the healing mode, we have 3 options in here: off, luminance, and on. And off doesn't try to blend the source with the destination. Luminance will blend it based on brightness only, and on will blend the brightness and the color. So you can look at these 3 options, and the on and the off is probably your best options. If it's not perfect, you can resample it. I noticed that when I dragged out, I wasn't getting a good preview of where I was stopping. So when I sampled, I was way over in these other 2 lines, and it kind of gives a goofy look up here. All right, so if you're happy with that, you can keep moving it around as I'm doing right now. Try to get it to blend away. So remember, Shift, Command, and then drag. Command is the thing that's going to make it behave like the patch tool. All right, I'm making quite a mess. All right, I had it better the first time. So, playing around with that, you would get rid of that sign and make it look good. Stay in this Vanishing Point workspace. We don't want to leave this. The next thing that we're ready to do, I'm going to need to zoom out a little bit so that we can see the windows over here on the right as well. We're ready to install new windows. So we're going to drag a marquee around a window on the right side of the wall. So with your marquee tool, we're going to come over to the right side of the wall and we're going to marquee this first window right here. So put your marching ants around that. We're going to hold down Shift and Option. The Shift is going to keep it centered. The Option key is going to copy it, whereas before it did the content-aware fill and kind of patched it. So Shift, Option, and drag this around to the left side of the building. Notice it starts wrapping. I'm getting a really slow lag time. I have no idea where I am right now, other than halfway wrapped around. It's kind of scary. You guys getting that, or is it giving you, okay. I'm just gonna guess. I want it to stop in here, so I'm gonna let go of my mouse and my 2 keys. And I'm gonna give it a minute to think. Yep, there it is. So eventually it brought it over. If you want to try different heel options to see which one looks best, off, luminance, or on, you can rotate through those. Okay, we have a problem here. What do you guys see as a problem with the window?
Perspective.
Facing the wrong way, kind of dug in the wrong way, right? Okay, so we need to correct this with the transform tool, but we can only do it as long as the window stays selected. So hopefully your marching ants are still around there. We're going to type the letter T to get into our transform tool. And notice we have boxes around it now. And up in our top left option area, we have flip and flop. Evidently they're different. We're going to click flop. Come on, why is this taking so long? And if you need to, grab the bounding boxes and make your window smaller or larger. I cannot believe how slow and laggy this is. Are you guys seeing this happen, or is it stalling out? Oh my God, what is wrong with my computer?
I can't even get the marquee to go. It just freezes. And I can't try and cancel the marquee because I've hit escape. It cancels the whole vanishing point.
Yeah, you have to re-enter it then. Okay, well, this is fun. So those of you, I see your window is flipped. That looks good. I see flipped windows when I'm looking out, or flopped, I guess. Then you're going to resize it to make it as tall as you want it to be to match the windows on the left. And then from here, we're going to make a duplicate of this window. So we're going to do a Shift and an Option and a drag to create a second window, which I'm probably going to crash everything when I do this, because it hasn't done anything I've told it to do lately. But doing that should drag out a second window for you quite nicely. Shift, Option, drag to make a copy of the window and pull it out to the left.
Usually if you press undo, it kind of fixes it right away.
Click what?
I option drag the window,
Yeah.
and then I'd just click somewhere, and then I press Control Z, Command Z.
Oh, you,
and
okay.
it just put it there, and then that works for me.
Well, here's what I did. I hit enter and I got totally out of Vanishing Point, but hey, I've got 2 flipped windows. Not quite what I wanted. I would have wanted to tweak them a little bit more. But when you do get out of Vanishing Point, that's one thing to note. You are not in that filter anymore. You're back to your normal Photoshop workspace. So in the past, every time I've done this, including last night at home, you see all that. It's not stalling out. You don't have to commit to it. You see all those changes, and you can change your blending mode. I would try the color blending mode on those because they have that real dark outline because it's shadier on the front of the building than it is on the left. So when you're doing that live and seeing that preview, the different blend modes might really help. All right, so we took out a sign, we added 2 windows. We're going to add that pinstripe now. And I'm out of Vanishing Point, so I need to stay on the Vanishing Point layer, but I need to re-enter it. So Filter, Vanishing Point. Now I'm back in the grid, and I have the special Vanishing Point tools. And now my 2 windows are where they're supposed to be, but they don't look quite right, but whatever. The thing we're going to do next is going to be on the front or the right-hand panel. So kind of zoom in so that you can see above these awnings. This is where we're going to add that pinstripe. We want to add a green pinstripe. So we're going to take the eyedropper tool from this special window and we're going to sample the green paint in this molding above the awnings to get that same color green. Notice the brush color shows up here as green. Switch to the brush tool, and here's my preview. It shows the diameter, the hardness, the opacity, and how it's going to behave. So we're going to change this to have a diameter of 10. So I'm going to make it a lot smaller. Hardness of 70. This is something that you kind of have to play around with. It kind of has to do with kind of the blur or how it looks. So everything on this right-hand side is kind of fuzzy, if you will. If we did a hardness of 100%, it would look like brand new crisp paint and it would stand out compared to the rest of them. So the 70 hardness is going to help with that. We're going to keep the opacity where it is and we're not going to heal. All right, with the brush tool, we're going to start over here on the left and we're going to hold down Shift and we're going to drag out a line and then stop before the drain spout. But notice how that made that straight line in perspective. It angled it, and at the far right end it's actually thinner or smaller because it's going away from you. So we added that line in the perspective tool as well. So we're happy with this. So we can click OK or Enter up here at the top of our vanishing filter pop-up box. And we're out of vanishing, we're back into regular old Photoshop, and the two things that we did are on this layer that we can turn on and off. So we can show the before and after of our new windows and our pinstriping. All right. If things don't look natural, if you don't like the way your vanishing point looks, you can go back and try again. You can change the opacity of this layer. You can do different things. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to add painted words of her name of her business onto the side of this building. So the thing is that we can't do type directly in the perspective tool. It doesn't understand that. We're going to have to do our type first and then drag it in as just pixels or a shape basically before we take it into perspective. Let's sample with our eyedropper in this version of Photoshop, not the vanishing tool. Sample a green color, so either the paint again or the awnings, whatever green color you want. Get that to be your foreground color. I'm going to take the type tool and we're going to set up our type. The version that they used in the book is Kaflish Script Bold. And of course we don't have that anymore, or I don't have that, or maybe it's not a type kit. So find some sort of a font that's kind of scripty that you can read. And this is how we're going to put the name of her store on the side. So I chose Corner Store JF regular. And I'm going to stick with 16 point and see how that turns out. All right, we're then going to click and we're going to have our lorem ipsum show up. It's going to make a new layer for us, and we're going to type in Kate's and then hit return down to the next line, cafe. And then obviously I need to fix my leading because they're piled up on top of each other. So 16 on 18 point type, maybe that's all a little too big. So kind of make it so it's going to fit in this area below the light. So adjust your font size. Oops. Oh, for crying out loud. And when you're relatively happy with that, accept your type. And we have a new layer called Kate's Cafe that is a text layer. Vanishing Point only works with raster art or pixels. So vector art, which is what our type is actually in Photoshop because we can resize it, it needs to be turned into raster art or pixels first. There's a faster way to do this, and instead of telling it through the menu items to go into pixels, we're going to command click on the thumbnail to the left of Kate's Cafe, and whenever you command click on a thumbnail, it loads up those pixels. I'm going to zoom in so you can see that I have marching ants around my pixels right now. So command click on this thumbnail to load the pixels. And we're going to copy the pixels. So edit copy, or the shortcut is Command C. All right, turn off that visibility of that layer and deselect your marching ants. And we're going to go back into our Vanishing Point layer, and we're going to go back into the Vanishing Point filter. So filter, Vanishing Point. There is a shortcut for it there, Option Command V. That brings us back into our grid. And now we're going to paste those pixels into our grid. So Command V, paste the pixels. Notice they're way up here at the top left. So we need to take our move tool and bring it down here. Oh, this lag is killing me. I'm ready to cry.
I gave up. I'm just watching your screen.
Oh, well, it's slowly working now. I got to count to 100 between things here. But notice it brought it in perspective. You can see the angle. Mine's too big. T is the transform shortcut, so I can make it a little bit smaller so that it fits here. I'm going to have to do this at home so that there's actually a demo that works, because this is really the pits. All right, I'm going to assume that I was happy with that, and I'm going to hit OK. See what it did. Yeah, not so much. However, it did at least put it in perspective. So you can imagine if you had a really long rectangular name that you wanted to paint on the side of the building, it gets more dramatic as we go away. So it would get a lot smaller at that end and bigger at this end. So this is Vanishing Point. Terrible demo, just didn't work at all the way I wanted it to, but it's kind of a fun thing. So what I would like you to do is practice this. I want you to go find a picture of a building that has a front face and a side face. I want you to make a new blank layer called Vanishing Point. Enter that filter, Vanishing Point filter, and I want you to do a couple of things to it. Try what we just did. Move some windows, take out some signs, add some pinstriping. If you want to add words to it, remember you can't take the type tool straight into Vanishing Point. You need to do it first and select the pixels and copy and paste them into the vanishing layer. If we would have done a new blank layer, enter Vanishing Point on that, we would have had to start all over with setting up our grid before we added her type, her name to the store. So once we had this grid set up on this layer, every time we reactivate it and go into the Vanishing Point filter, that grid is there for us. It's done. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. So see if you can find somewhere online a picture. I was hoping it wouldn't be that hard to find something, but maybe it is. I'd like you to practice on this, and I'm just going to walk around and see that you're getting it to work. And so over your shoulder, I'm going to check on that, and then I'm going to talk about the homework in a little while. So go ahead and find some pictures. If it ends up that they just don't exist, and you want to start working with this image again from scratch, but do different things to it, maybe take out those windows and add a big picture window, add some different color pinstriping to it, whatever. Here's a cool picture. So go ahead and play around with this a little bit. But you're going to want the front of a building, just to keep it simple like we did with, you know, a left side and a front, or a front and a right side going away from you. All of that lagging, and I had no idea where my Kate's Cafe ended up going. If I don't like that, this is again on a layer, so I just went back to the Vanishing Point layer, and I'm in regular Photoshop, not in that filter, and I just took the eraser and I erased out where I put Kate's Cafe. Now I can do that whole step over again. I can make the type, bring the pixels into the vanishing layer and try to position them better again. So it's non-destructive because you're working on this extra layer, transparent layer.